we start getting ready for our first panel, which is about to kick off in 10 minutes. Do we have any G1 fans in the room? Yeah! Do we have any Transformers the Movie fans in the room? Yeah! I'm so looking forward to having Scott up on stage to talk about his experience behind the booth with Wally, working on such amazing things as, well, look, the dude made Soundwave's voice. So we're going to talk about his entire career, but we do need to get sorted out because we have a little bit of a special treat going on, which will be really, really cool, and you want to be here. So that's going to kick off in about 10 minutes, but we're going to get set up for that right now. So we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
The processing in general for Transformers was very complex. Basic piece of equipment was a thing called a sensor filter.
Hello, everybody! Welcome to Saturday, welcome to the first panel of the day. This is a panel that I have been so excited for a very, very long time. Many years, in fact, I have wanted to get this gentleman on stage because he represents the side of Transformers that we very rarely hear about, and he has so many fantastic stories. He is so talented, and he is responsible for, let's be honest, making Soundwave as cool as he is. Everybody, please put your hands together. A massive warm welcome to Scott Brownlee! You might be wondering what's going on over there. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Scott, welcome to TFNation. How you doing?
Just fine.
Scott.
Oh, silly you.
Smooth, we got it, mate.
I got to tell you, that's a Frank Welker gag, so I just stole it from him.
I love it. Normally it's like, tell us a little bit about Frank, and you're just like, no, I'm stealing his bit right off the bat. Yeah. All right then, so before we get started, we've got so much to talk about over the next 50 minutes, so much to show you, but I always like to start these things from the beginning. So, who is Scott Brownlee?
Well, in my advanced years, I'm still not sure. But, you mean like how did I start and how did
let's take it all the way back, yeah. Like, what was things like for you, and how did you get into this crazy world of sound engineering?
Exactly. Okay. When I graduated from high school, I had decided I wanted to be a doctor. So I was going to go to med school, or pre-med, and started that, and about 2 weeks after I started pre-med, I got invited to be in a band. So I thought, well, that would be a fun thing to do in my spare time. So I started in the band, and we got very popular very fast and went on the road. So that was kind of the end of my school career. And we toured for 5 years. Back in those days, a band that wanted to quote unquote make it, they wanted to get a recording contract with a major label. To do that, a band has to record demos and demos and demos, send them off, get refused, make more demos, send them off, get refused. So in that process, we spent a lot of time in recording studios. And I just loved recording studios. It was, to me, the most creative environment I'd ever been in, and really, to be honest, I've ever been in since. It just, the vibe, dude, it's nice in there, and you're on the edge of your creativity because you just want to get the best takedown on at that time, tape. Have any of you heard of tape? Okay. So, after touring with the band for 5 years, the last 2 of those years were all one-nighters, which is just exhausting. It's drive in, set up, do a sound check, maybe get a shower, then do the concert, then tear down, load up, and start driving to the next town. I knew in my heart I wanted to be a family man, and I couldn't rectify those 2 lifestyles. So I was mulling that over. This is a long story.
Keep going, I'm fascinated.
Okay. I was mulling that over when we got offered a recording contract from Columbia Records. And yeah, really, you've heard of Columbia Records. Have you heard of records?
Yeah,
Okay.
vinyls.
So yeah, exactly. That's what you young folks call it now, vinyl, right? I looked at it and I said to the band, I don't think I can do this. I'm sorry. And they weren't really happy with me. But they later reformed, and about 2 years later they got another recording contract offered. And in the meantime, I was adrift because I had a whole semester of incompletes back in uni, as you folks call it. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew I loved the recording studio. So I got a job in a recording studio. In those days, you couldn't get an education anywhere. The only way you could get schooled in recording studios is start work in a recording studio and kind of work your way up. I got a job in a recording studio, and a week after I got the job, the owner got sick and went in the hospital, and I just had to take over. And I didn't know beans about what I was doing. We were doing this really complicated album, and I every once in a while I'll go back and listen to that just to humble myself, because it's technically just really awful. But I learned really fast. And then I decided, you know, I still got that musical thing in me, and I was writing music for local television, and I didn't know what I was doing. I'm just, you know, so I decided I was going to go to music school. I'm getting this shorter now. It's almost at the end. I went to music school, and at the end of music school, I was again thinking, okay, what am I going to do? And a friend, one of my classmates, said, there's this recording studio a friend has, and they're looking for an engineer. Would you be interested? And I said, sure. And I went to interview, and it was what ended up being Wally Burr Recording. And we just jumped right into doing all these Marvel shows, just show after show after show. And Amber will remind me that at that time, Wally Burr Recording was called Soundtracks. We did all sorts of different stuff, but all of Marvel stuff. And some of you definitely know that at that time, Marvel was just animation. That's all they did. And oh, so many shows. And then we got Transformers, and Transformers came in. Now I can go on into the production, can't I?
Well, yes, but I've got a few questions, first of all, because I need to know, what position in the band were you playing?
The lowest position. No, I was bass player.
Yeah.
So basically, the cool one of the band.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, just, you know.
I've always thought that. And that actually it was acoustic stand-up bass that was electrified. We did kind of very electrified bluegrass. It was bizarre stuff, but Yeah, I was cool.
Yeah, still are, absolutely. So does that mean then music's always been a part of your life, like from a very young age?
It really has.
Yeah.
Yes, my first performance, and you're a theater guy, but I was the lead in a musical in 4th grade. It was called Cowboy to the Moon. And that was my first on-stage appearance.
Yeah. And so did you come from a musical background family, or was it just a gift that you had in terms of a good ear?
Music was always a part of our home. My mom was church organist for literally my whole life up until I left the town. And we'd go to church every Sunday because she was playing organ literally every Sunday. And my dad had a barbershop quartet, which was great fun. They always had the rehearsals at our house. So yes, music was always
very musical family. And did you realize sort of from an early age that you had a good aptitude for music in terms of, you know, well, first of all, being able to play bass, but also just having the ear for music?
My son, last night, my son is with me on this trip, and I heard him say last night that this is the most ridiculously humble man you'd ever want to meet. But it's because I really understood how inferior I was to what I wanted to be. So, yeah, I loved playing music, and I thought I was okay, but I didn't ever think it would end up being a profession.
Okay, so that brings us nicely then to walking into the door of Soundtracks, or what would become Wally Burr Recording Studios. I've got to ask right off the bat, initial impressions of Wally.
Let's say he lived up to his reputation, and that is to say that he's very imposing. He was a tall man, like 6'3", 6'4". I'm not a tall man, but his whole demeanor was so in control and so knowing exactly what he wanted in this person he was interviewing, and later in everything that he did. He became, over the years that I worked with him 8 to 15 hours a day, he became a real father figure to me. Just a sweet man underneath. When he's directing, he knows exactly what he wants, and he got it.
I suppose that's, a point that I wanted to bring up, his reputation of being a perfectionist in terms of getting from his actor what he wants. You obviously saying that, you're relatively new to the profession at this point. Was it a single swim sort of situation, or was Wally very, taking the time to make sure that you understood exactly what he wanted? I suppose the easiest way to phrase that question is, how collaborative was the process between the two of you behind the glass?
Wally didn't know much about the technical side of it. So I think he wanted the personality behind the board more than anything. And luckily, in the process of doing any production, there is the, what do you call it when people come in to try to, the audition process. Thank you. So that's very simple. It's just one mic and throw it up and you roll a tape and record and then you cut it later. And in a way, that's the way I got my feet wet. But through that process of auditions and then the shows, we got a really good working relationship.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Transformers, but really Wally and Wally Burr Studios were involved in so many of the Marvel Sunworld productions and things like that.
So many, and other production companies too. We did some things for Hanna-Barbera. Hanna-Barbera, we did some things for Disney, we did some things for, I don't know, there are a lot of them.
It always makes me, it always shocks me to think that, especially given the turnaround time of these cartoons back in the day, you know, going from recording to on the TV in sort of about 3 months, the pace you guys must have been working at must have been incredible. I mean, like, did you sleep at any point during the 1980s?
I slept during the sessions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just press record and...
You guys go on ahead. We lost quite a bit of sleep because even though the actual sessions were going to 8 to 12 hours a day, then there's still the editing afterwards to get ready to be able to handle the next show, whatever came in the next day. So, yeah, you hit the nail on the head there.
So, Wally is famous, as we've already talked about getting the exact line reading that he wants, often delivering the line reading to the actor themselves. If they weren't getting it, that's a story that's been heard. But your job, or one of your jobs, behind the scenes, was to do an awful lot of the mechanical, importing the mechanical aspect to the voices of the Transformers. My question to you was Wally as hands-on like that? If you were to hear, a voice that's been run through a synthesizer or something, would he be as meticulous?
Not really, because he didn't have that technical background. Occasionally, but most of that, like with Transformers, Nelson Shin, the producer, he was on site through a lot of what you're talking about. And the original processing, and by the way, the processing is kind of interesting because Soundwave is iconic, but I did a Soundwave toy for robots. And he was talking with me on the phone about what he wanted. And I said, I'm curious, you've already done Optimus Prime and Megatron. How did you handle the processing on those? Because I didn't get a chance to do your versions of those. And he said, there was processing on those? And most people, I mean, to be really fair, most people don't understand that all the robots in, what's the name of the show we work on?
GoBots.
In Transformers, all of the robot voices are processed in one way or the other. And Nelson Shin had some very specific, like Wally, he had some very specific ideas about what he thought they should sound like. And we rented in thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment and spent a good 10 days just trying this. What do you think of this, Nelson? Well, that's kind of what I want, but can you make it sound more orange, you know? No, I don't know what you... But we worked hard getting all the processing. One of the reasons that a lot of people don't realize that the processing is on all the robots is they have different kinds of processing, and he wanted it to be subtle, but mechanical, but not robotic. So that was a challenge. And I think since we've recorded all of G1, and a lot of the voice actors will come and do these kinds of cons, they go back and listen, what the heck did I do for that voice? And they go back and listen, and they'd hear, like, the Autobots, we used a diesel engine to process the voices, and they'd hear that kind of gravelly, rumbly, mechanical, and they'd end up doing that with their voices. So I can understand why people didn't know there was processing on a lot of it.
Yeah. In terms of working with Wally, that's one thing, but obviously on the other side of the glass, you have this incredible talent of voice actors who are brought in time and time again, Tell me a little bit about your interaction with the voice actors. Did you spend much time with them? Because there were some absolute legends, you know, people who would go on to be legends, Frank Welker, Peter Cullen. Then you had, you know, people like Scatman Crothers coming through. Tell me a little bit about your interaction with them.
I love talking about the voice actors because I'd had experience with show business people, and a lot of the reputation of show business people is that they're a little high and mighty and a little hard to work with. And I'll say this very broadly, voice actors aren't like that. They love what they do. They're so thankful to be doing that. And they're the nicest group of folk I have ever encountered in this whole business. There's a lot of camaraderie between them. Again, they're just so grateful to be doing what they're doing. And yes, there's a lot of time in between sections that we're doing where we just sat around and talked. And such a great bunch of people.
And so, you know, that voice actor, that stable that Wally put together of incredible talent was on display in Transformers the movie, but then there were the celebrities who were brought in. Most notable, of course, Orson Welles, but then you had Judd Nelson coming in, Lionel Stander. What was it like working with celebrities on a movie like that?
I had had a lot of experience with shows where on-camera actors would come in and do guest spots in a whole cast of what is normally just voice actors, and they were always incredulous at what a specific skill voice acting for animation is. And Wally would address it with a lot of people who were just coming in for first or second time doing animation. He would explain that the animation, especially at that time, was fairly limited, and the energy in the voice had to make up for what was missing in the animation. So it's a whole different kind of acting. And these the on-stage actors had come in and they were aghast at the voice actors. But the voice actors would say, they'd kind of emotionally put their arm around him and say, you need to bump it up a little bit. Of course, Wally was doing that anyway, but that camaraderie. And I'm glad you mentioned Judd, because he was young.
Yeah.
And he came in and he was kind of flustered because he felt off base. It's such a different kind of acting. Watching the voice actors take him in and keep care of him was delicious.
And then Mr. Wells arrived. Or rather, sorry, the limo with his wheelchair arrived first. And then Mr. Wells arrived. Tell me a little bit about working with the cinematic legend Orson Welles.
Again, I love talking about that experience because his reputation was so strongly that he was a jerk to work with. And the reason for that is there was a tape that went around Hollywood for years. He was in a session, it was a commercial session, and I can't remember, some wine or I can't
Frozen
remember
peas.
what it was. What?
Frozen peas.
Frozen peas. Okay. That's really putting his thespian skills to the challenge. And I think that was actually part of it. But in this tape, trying to do this frozen peas commercial, he got mad at the director. He was furious at the script. And for some reason, he was absolutely livid with the engineer. I mean, this poor engineer is sitting back there on the other side of the glass. He's trying to do his job. And on this tape, Orson Welles just shredded this poor tech guy. And that tape went around Hollywood. And that is what cemented the legend of Orson Welles and working. So we were on pins and needles when he came in. We thought, oh my gosh. And then he came in, we had kind of a meet and greet. And yes, he came in a limo. He had the limo driver wheeled him in. And there was also a chihuahua that had to sit on a stool next to him. And all through the recording, the chihuahua was going, I'm thinking, oh, the editing we're going to have to do with this. We're having just casual conversation. Wally brings up that tape, and the rest of us are going, Wally, Wally, Wally. And Orson Welles said, oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. I feel so bad about that recording. He said it was a bad day. He said I was a jerk. Simple. I don't think he said jerk, but we have some restrictions on what we can say here. Yeah. He was lovely to work with. Even beyond being gentlemanly, he was absolutely professional. And I think Wally and Mr. Welles hit it off very well because they both wanted the same level of excellence, and they weren't ready to give any concessions to anything less.
Yeah, that's, it's really nice to hear that, the legend of Orson Welles is not necessarily the reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of Orson Welles,
were we speaking of Orson Welles?
Well, we have some lines of Orson's which you've asked me to pick up. So I thought this would be a good time because you mentioned about having to feed him some lines and that you wanted to do a little bit of audience participation. Is that right?
Kind of. But first I wanted to explain that I requested that we have some script lines up because of the way Mr. Welles worked. Usually, the actor, and in those days we usually recorded all the actors en ensemble, but because of his stature and his reputation, he came in by himself. And we went through kind of a rehearsal, and there was it's very common for the director to give the lead-in line before the line that the actor is going to be doing. And so Wally did the lead-in line, and there was this dead silence. And Mr. Welles said, I can't do Orson Welles, but he said, "You aren't line reading me, are you?" And Wally would just, "Oh, no, Mr. Welles, I'm sure as you know, I was just giving you the lead-in line to the..." And there's this dead silence, and he said, "So you were." We all went, ugh. But they went through the rehearsal, and then it came time to record. We all went in the control room, and it was roll tape, and Wally did a slate. And as you know, the slate is to mark the different takes with the line number and the take number of each line. And so Wally said, "This is line 32, take 1. Dead silence in the studio. And then Mr. Welles said, "You aren't going to put those little numbers in, are you?" And Wally said, "Well, I'm sure as you know, Mr. Welles, those are the slates so that we can find the select takes in editing later." And he said, "You aren't going to put those little numbers in, are you?" So we, in the control room, we kind of looked at each other and shrugged and said, "Okay." And basically, he had his head for the recording. And this is the way he would do his lines. "This is my command. You are is my command. You are to destroy. This is mine. To destroy the auto." And we're just going nuts, because first of all, we didn't understand what he was doing for several lines, but he was editing as he performed. And he'd get to a word and he'd go, "I could do those two words better." He'd go back and do those two words. And I'm thinking, okay, we got the dog, we got all these unslated just pieces of dialogue, and I thought, this is going to take months to edit. And we rambled along, and the two guys from Sunbow who would come in for the recording, Sunbow was well, you guys know that, the production company, and they said, "Scott, we're running late. Do you mind if we just take the tapes back to New York and edit them there?" I didn't mind.
Love it.
So, but you took this a step further with the audience participation. So, in your best Orson Welles voice, I'll point like Orson would read it, and everybody can read what I'm pointing to. So, we'll just start with, "Oh, you made this for Not a Short Man, didn't you?" Well, let's start down here, because I already gave you a hint about those. So we'll start here, I'll point, and then we won't slate, and you'll read it as a group. So, for a time. Ooh, you guys are pretty good. That wasn't very Orson Welles-ish, though. I'd like some more anatomy in that, so it's
Get some bass in that voice.
Yeah. Are you ready? For a time. Oh, that's better.
I consider sparing wretched for a time. I consider sparing for a time. Wretched middle planet of time. Silence law.
So you can imagine that give yourself a hand. But you can imagine, just as you're doing that, if you were trying to keep track of what was the best performance that you could do on a word or two words or three words, the mind that was able to keep that all organized, I was astounded.
I'm sure the Sunbow people were as well when they got the tapes back to New York.
But I think it came out pretty well.
Yeah, pretty memorable. Now, there is another voice, and this brings us to this desk over here. A little character called Soundwave. So, do you want to explain to us what it takes to make Soundwave sound like Soundwave?
A little more on the processing first. A little more on the processing in general of all the robots. Because Nelson Sheen wanted the Autobots to have one sound, the Decepticons to have another sound, but there were individual characters like Starscream is a good example, that had different processing. To do that, this was all recorded analog, on tape, and we cut the tape, and we have to do so many cuts that you don't take the tape out and put it in a splicing block with a razor blade. We just put our thumb where we'd want the cut to be, make the cut with scissors, put it together without putting it in a splicing block and go on. But for all these different kinds of processings, we'd have to separate the characters into their different kinds of processing. So that means in the beginning, because it got more and more complicated, in the beginning we had like 7 different reels of tape that were separated out for the kind of processing that we used on them. And we do the processing on those kinds of those reels, and then we'd have to splice it all together. In Soundwave, Nelson Shin wanted, because it's a cassette, he wanted kind of musical, but not too musical. He didn't want it sing-songy. So it had to be, first of all, not a lot of changes in the musicality, and secondly, kind of ominous, but not ominous. He had all these things like, how are we going to do all that? But we had to rent in thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment for all these different kinds of processing. And everybody, and even this morning, I've had several people say, how'd you do Soundwave? And I'll tell you a little bit about it. My father-in-law was a doctor in a small town, and he had developed a smoked barbecue sauce that was really delicious and incredibly unusual. And people, he'd like serve it for town barbecues and stuff, and people would always ask, Bill, how'd you do that? And he would tell them the whole recipe except for one ingredient. So I'm going to tell you most of the recipe except for 1 or 2 ingredients, because I was talking to a driver we had, and he was wanting to know the same thing. And truly, it's been interesting, because I didn't think it was that big a deal, but in 40 years, people haven't been able to figure out exactly what I did. And I said to the driver, well, you know, now that you mention it, it was kind of clever. And it was. From what we got from Nelson and trying to translate into the mechanics and the electronics, it was a lot. There was a lot involved. And I think I'm pretty proud.
Yeah.
Our son is probably back there going, my dad just said he's proud of himself. He doesn't do that. So, one of the things that was involved in deciding how to do the processing for Soundwave is, because we wanted to get that musicality, it was a problem thinking about the voice actor's inflection, his melody, because that would interfere with what we were doing musically. And I always say, I don't remember if it was Frank Welker's idea or my idea, so I'm going to take credit for it. His Dr. Claw voice that he did for Inspector Gadget, and I can kind of do it.
Hey!
And that was perfect, because it didn't have tonality. It had all the diction, but not the tonality. So that was perfect for what we wanted to do musically. And then we started to impose the musicality on it. And here's the basis of what we did, which was the foundational piece of equipment of everything we had. It's called a vocoder. And a vocoder imposes the articulation of the original voice onto whatever you want, whether it's diesel engines or jet engines or a synthesizer. And then we'd roll tape. I'd know what the line is. I had the script. I'd listen to it a couple of times to get the pacing. We wanted a few changes melodically, unmelodically, but changes in the course of a line, so it just doesn't all sound monotony. And then I'd roll the unprocessed tape, roll the recorder that was getting both the unprocessed tape and the vocoder, and then I'd play live to what was happening on the original voice and lay down that vocoder voice. Did I explain that all?
Yes,
Okay.
you seem to have left one crucial bit out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, do we have a sample, perhaps?
We do, and I was going to record him, but we were short on time, and we can do this on the autograph table for anybody that wants to. They can come up and record a couple of lines of sound wave from the script, or you can even do an outgoing voice message for your voicemail, and then we'll process it like sound wave and send you an MP4 of it. So let me sit down so I can see the stinking computer. David sent me. Now, I've heard some people call you Dave. I thought you introduced yourself as David. How do you like it?
Boss? No, David's fine.
Okay, David is good. That's how I labeled you here. So let me play you just a little bit, and let's see if everything is still maintained being on. I'll play you a little bit of his voice without the processing, and then we'll play a little with the processing.
Welcome to TFNation, Operation Entertainment.
He is a professional thespian, and now we have already put in the synthesizer that goes through a vocoder. And by the way, it isn't the vocoder that we use, because back then, just that one piece of equipment was $20,000, which our son tells me, he looked it up, in today's money that's about $67,000. And when I started doing the cons, I thought, I'm gonna get me one of those. It's a company named Sennheiser, famous for their microphones. And I looked and looked, and I found one, and very used, was $27,000. And I thought, yeah, maybe I'll find another way. I found out later that the reason they're so expensive, or that one is so expensive, because they only made 12 of them. Wow. So they're pretty rare. So now I'll put in, I hope, I always hate doing these live demos. Oh, it should work, but I don't know.
Welcome to TFNation, Operation Entertainment.
So you can hear that I was changing, and most of what I played was just a couple of notes, and mostly it was, musically speaking, a second or a minor second on the keyboard. And since I've been doing this, since I got back into the cons, I like to do things like every time Soundwave refers to himself, like Soundwave Superior, I like to play a major triad because it sounds jubilant.
Well, that's fantastic. Big round of applause there for Scott. So, if we have a microphone and some people might have some questions, let's go to the audience. We've got one right down here at the front.
Yes, I ran into, well, not literally, but in the elevator.
I do have one particular question. Do you know how the famous transformation sound was made? Because most people don't know how it was made, and I was wondering if you knew.
I don't know, because that's post-production, and we do all the recording and the processing on the voices, and then we send it off. I have a good Nelson Shin story about the animation. And a lot of people don't understand that in those days, all the audio was sent off to whatever foreign country it was that did the animation. And they did the animation to the dialogue. And now, like for the big Disney things, it's kind of the reverse. The animation is done first, and then the actors will, it's not quite true. Goes both ways, but the actors will ADR, automatic dialogue replacement, to the animation that's already been done.
Got a question over here?
After that answer, I'm a little...
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Did I answer your question? Oh, okay. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
I'm a little worried this is too similar of a question, but something that's been plaguing me since I was a child is, how did so many Star Wars sound effects get into every cartoon? Was there like a bootleg that just passed around in the community? Was it just one production company? Did somebody record it in a movie theater or what?
It is a very good question, to which I don't know the answer, except to say that Hollywood, everybody in Hollywood rips each other off all the time, and just to the extent that's just below a copyright infringement. Just below.
Just that 20% change.
Yeah.
In the middle here?
Hi there. So you grew up in an analog world. You've worked extensively in tape on machines that take up an entire room. What's your take now that the industry's moved so digitally and you can do all of this stuff that took an entire recording studio on consumer, commercially available hardware and software?
As a musician, I think it's great. I mean, the fact that I can do, or anybody can, literally anybody can do a darn good musical project on a laptop. It's amazing, it's magical. I do think that, because I grew up in just playing in the studio, the whole band's in there at the same time, and we worked so hard to get the perfect take on song, get that on tape, and that was hard, but it was its own kind of magic, because you're so on edge and creatively that you're doing your best performance, and I think there's a lot of that that's missed. And sound-wise, technically, you know, people say, "Oh, I can hear that's digital. It sounds like it sounds stinking great." Yes.
Oh, we've got one just
I'm
over,
sorry.
over the back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, I've read somewhere that Frank Welker is able to do white noise and has pranked several engineers before by doing white noise. I'm just wondering if he ever played the same prank on you and how much time you lost in trying to track down the noise.
That happened to me a couple of times. He would make I think he even did a good, you know that beep that McDonald's French fry machines make when the French fries are done? He did an amazing version of that. And we're going, where does that come from? But I know Frank, and I know what he's up to most of the time.
We've got time for one more question. Yes?
I'm like a hobbyist music producer, so this has been one of my favourite panels so far. I was wondering what some of the amazing synthesizers that you had the privilege of working with throughout your career.
Well, you translate.
What synthesizer question?
Yeah, what makes the kind of synthesizer
Or
models
what
do you
make
get to
and
work
type
with?
of synthesizer have you worked with in the past, and which one's your favorite?
Oh, I'm not a keyboard player, so I'm not crazy informational about all. The synthesizer we used for Soundwave was an ARP 2600, and I did kind of get an inclination that Transformers was going to be around for a while. I couldn't buy all those thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment, but I thought it'd be smart to get an ARP synthesizer. And I did buy one back in the day, and I used that for the rest of the Transformers episodes. And then we moved to Spokane, Washington, and I put it up in the attic and forgot about it. And then when these cons came up, I thought, I'm going to drag out my ARP. And I brought it down. It's an old piece of equipment. I was so excited because I could pretty much remember that even the settings on it, which there are a lot of settings, were what I used in the original. I thought, I'll just plug it in and I'll be good. It didn't work. Yeah.
Right, well, we are just about out of time, but because I'm greedy, I'll always save the last question for myself. As a musician, we can get personal. As a musician, when you get in the house and you've got a spare hour to yourself and there's nobody else around, what album do you put on?
Ooh. It changes all the time. But if I'm really wanting musicality, and I suppose there's nostalgia in it too, but when I go back and listen to Beatles albums, I'm still amazed. I was amazed when I was in high school when they were coming out, thinking, this is so musical and so technically innovative, and I still get that when I listen to the Beatles.
Great choice. Right, well then, our time is up, but your time at the convention has just started. Scott will be in the Trader Hall, so if you want to go ahead, speak to him, you can get one of those incredible recordings. But please, everybody, give a massive round of applause. Right, we are going to strike down the stage and we will be back in approximately 10 minutes. Thank you very much.